Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Whitby, and today I'm excited to introduce you to one of our clients, Sarah Englade.
With it being so high volume, so every single day, my phone would go off before I even got to the office at like 6:30 in the morning, 7, saying, hey, my receptionist didn't show up. I need you to get someone over here by 7:30. And so having to hustle to work and start making calls on the road, and there's always some fire. We know this in recruiting, especially temp staffing. There's always a fire Monday morning and Friday afternoon. Always.
Sarah is the owner and founder of Monarch Talent Solutions. They are a boutique executive search firm specializing in accounting, finance, and human resources positions throughout Houston, Texas.
It wasn't easy for me. I didn't first know what I was doing. It was my first time owning a company. I started a recruiting company in a pandemic with no jobs. I had no book of business starting my own company. You know, like anyone else, after you're working your tail off, trying to make connections, trying to make magic happen for 6 months and not seeing it happen, it's impossible for you not to start questioning yourself. That voice inside my head, I had to tune it all the way down.
Since launching Monarch Talent Solutions in 2020, Sarah has successfully scaled the business. I think you built like $1.5 million within an 18-month time frame, which is insane. Before launching Monarch, Sarah gained nearly a decade of recruiting and leadership experience with 2 global recruiting firms.
The situation that I was in was actually a really just uncomfortable situation. Like my first go at recruiting was not the best environment fit for me. Being a top performer, it's hard to ask for help sometimes. You think you can like take on the world and you're just like the best at everything. But the truth is, over time, it just starts to chip away at you.
Between 2012 and 2020, she successfully placed over 2,800 candidates and generated millions in revenue. Now Sarah is focused on humanizing the recruitment process, driven by her firm's core values.
Relationships first, always. Can't always be like, what about me? Like, how does this work out for me? Like, you really have to keep giving and giving and giving, and you can't really expect anything in return. This is the plan. I don't have a plan B because I'm not going back. This has to work.
Sarah, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. That I'm remembering back to the very first time we spoke, and we discovered a connection that I didn't realize we shared, which is that I'm from Nova Scotia and I grew up there, and you have a connection to Nova Scotia too.
Yeah. So my mother's side of the family is all from Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. So we have a lot of people that still live there. And my dad's side is from Canada too, but we really side with the Nova Scotia people for some reason. So, yeah.
And did you spend any time there when you were a kid, or?
Yeah, there was a couple times that we went up there as small kids. And I'm going to be honest with you, like I need to go back as an adult because I hear how beautiful it is. But when I was a kid and I would go there, honestly, Mark, I found it to be boring. I'd be like, can we just go like anywhere else but here? And like the closest fun city was Halifax, and it took a while to get there. So when I was younger, I didn't like going, but now as an adult and being so far away, now I'm like, I really want to go back.
Right, because you live in Houston now, but where did you grow up?
I grew up just north of Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up in a city called Haverhill. So yeah, so we were really close to the Canadian border. We weren't far. So it was easier to get there when I was a kid, but much more difficult now.
Absolutely. You'll definitely need to go back and make sure it's in the summer though. So Sarah, how did you get into recruiting in the first place?
Like everyone else, on accident. So it all happened for me so I started my career in sales. So I was always in sales. I worked for a medical spa and had been with a company for 6.5 years, and then decided I wanted to work for a competitor. And I was really excited about moving on and trying something different. And that experience was awesome for the first 6 months. And then it was really scary because they were just an up and coming company and they were expanding all over Houston, but they didn't have like the capital to back it. So every time we'd get paid, they'd be like, you better run and, cash this check. It might not clear. We're like, what the heck? And I was single at the time, living in Houston. I had no family here. So I gave my resume to a friend who was the only person I knew that was a recruiter. And she's like, let me help you find a job. Gave it to her. But what ended up happening was, because I came from sales, the organization that had my resume was like, okay, she might be good internally. Where do we place her? So that's how the whole thing even happened.
Amazing. So this is back in 2012, was it?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And so you had a phenomenal run 8 years or so before you launched your own firm. You are consistently recognized as a top producer, placed 2,800
Yeah, you
people,
did
which
your
is
research. Yeah, that's right.
that's an insane number.
Mhm.
What talk to me about your career in recruiting prior to launching? I want to talk mainly about Monarch today, but I do want to just hear a little bit about your formative years in recruiting. Like what do you think enabled you to be so successful?
I actually think the reason I became so successful was because I started in the temp side of staffing. So I wasn't in I'm in direct hire now, but I started my career in temp, like customer service administrative roles. And it
Mhm.
was super high volume. It was really fast paced. It was extremely stressful. And coming into recruiting and not knowing recruiting or how it works, being kind of thrown into that sort of line of business, you have to figure it out quick. So I always tell people this too, like that are interested in maybe even breaking into recruiting. If you can start in temp staffing like I did, I honestly think you can do anything in this industry. So I started off in the temp side of doing like administrative customer service, mastered that, became a top producer in that, and became really bored. And I remember driving into work one day and I was like, God, I really don't want to go to work anymore. It was just, you kind of get burned out. I did that for about a year and a half, 2 years. And I remember calling my boss and being like, hey, when I get to the office, can we have a chat? And she's like, is it bad? So I'm like, well, it depends, but I don't know how you're going to take it because I didn't even know how I felt about it at that time. I was like, I just feel so burned out about going to work. So as soon as I got there, we went off the floor and she's like, what's going on? I let her know how I was feeling. And I was like, what's next for me here with this company? Is there any other avenue I can take? And she just said, you want to give accounting, a stab? And I'm like, sure. Didn't have any accounting experience, but literally the next day was transitioned into that division, started doing temp staffing for accounting. So more transactional roles, more of like your AR collections, your AP, your staff accounting, your bookkeeping, and mastered that. And a lot of people ask too, like, well, you didn't have an accounting background. How'd you pick it up? And when you're in recruiting, you just have tons of conversations. So I always tell people you learn what you're recruiting for by having conversations with those skilled professionals. So after having dozens of conversations with senior accountants, you figure out what they do. So mastered that, became a top producer, kept moving up the chain with them, and then ended up being with that company for, 6.5 years, left, and then took on a really interesting role while I was kind of working through my non-compete. So was with the next company, still in the temp division, but I sort of had a really cool, unique role with them because I got to travel a lot with that company. And it was very different coming from such a well-oiled machine. And that's how I explain like my first 6.5 years. It was like I got to learn the foundation and they had the most phenomenal training that I got to be a part of for 6.5 years. So they really did invest in us leveling up, especially if you were a top producer. They wanted you to go to these trainings. Where the next company, I had a hard time, honestly, Mark, because you go from being in a well oiled machine to a company that did not believe in metrics. They did not believe in rules. They did not believe in like actually having like specific lines of business that only did like accounting or administrative. Like they would staff anything. But it was still a really cool experience that I really needed. So I was with them for a year and a half. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, right when my non compete was over. And that's sort of what rolled into me starting my own company.
All right. I'm excited to hear that story. Can we just rewind a second? Because you kind of like, there's two main themes that I wanted to pull out that that you kind of brush past. One is the early burnout. Like, what do you think? I mean, now, by the way, I agree with you that temporary staffing is a great foundation for any recruiter. It's fast paced. If you can do that, then direct hire, permanent placement um, seems easy by comparison, right? Talk to me about burnout because feel like a lot of people go through that in recruiting in general. Um, what were the contributing factors to that?
I think there was quite a few contributing factors. I think with it being so high volume, so every single day my phone would go off before I even got to the office at like 6:30 in the morning, 7, saying, hey, my receptionist didn't show up. I need you to get someone over here by 7:30. And so having to hustle to work and start making calls on the road and doing that whole thing every single day. And it wasn't even just like 5 days a week because there was always some fire. And we know this in recruiting, especially temp staffing. There's always a fire Monday morning and Friday afternoon. always. So you have to be available all the time. And so in staffing as well, there's such high turnover. So if you're not built for it or if you're not given the support, you do feel like, what am I doing here? Like I could be doing so many other different things. I'm not fulfilled by this job. And that is really common in our industry, especially I feel like in these really large firms. And there was really high turnover on my team. So I really always felt like it was on me. And I also am just one of those people too that like I really like to perform at a very high level. So the amount of pressure I was feeling from upper management and the amount of pressure I was putting on myself to deliver without having a supportive team, that's honestly, I think, what ultimately led to that burnout feeling of driving to work being like, this is just not it.
Do you know what? It's so true. And not only the pressure of the role and constantly firefighting, but I find that a lot of top performers actually, the most pressure comes from themselves. They put themselves under a lot of pressure. So I definitely can recognize that. Looking back, so you solve that issue
Mhm.
by moving into a different uh, discipline, right? Accounting. But looking back, what advice would you give to young Sarah, to that, from the perspective that you have now and all the experience you've accumulated since then?
Well, I get asked this question a lot, and I the situation that I was in was actually a really just uncomfortable situation. Like my first go at recruiting was not the best environment fit for me, but I put a lot of pressure on myself for it to work, and I didn't really ask for a lot of support. And by the time I did ask for support, it was already too late, to be honest with
Mhm.
you. I was already, one foot out the door. So if I were to go back, I think I would honestly say and tell myself, like, hey, you can ask for help. Like it's
Right.
okay to ask for help. Like you're doing the very best that you can, but you'd be able to do better if you actually were able to accept the help that, is there for you. So it would probably be that because being a top performer, it's hard to ask for help sometimes. You think you can like take on the world and you're just like the best at everything. But the truth is, over time, it just starts to chip away at you.
That's good advice. So the second thing I wanted to just explore a little deeper is, what were the keys to getting to that level for you?
So I was really fortunate in the start of my career. So I got to experience a 360 desk for probably the first year and a half. So I had to do everything, BD, recruiting, making the placements, like making the match. But then we changed our business model and we went inside and outside sales. And so I was really strong inside. So inside would be me recruiting. Um, Job seekers. And because I was so good with job seekers, like I really listened, I really took the time to get to know their story and I built relationships with them. I think that's probably what really helped me become that top producer because I knew the candidates. I knew all of them. I knew their story. I knew what they wanted. I knew when their vacations were. I knew what their kids' names were. Like I really did. And so that's why I think a lot of the time, too, on the outside sales piece, when our BD people would bring in job orders, they would want me to fill the position because I was just really good at it. I could make the connection quickly. I knew the people to call. So a lot of the time, I think it's about the relationship that you have with your outside sales team, but it's really, I think, ultimately the relationship you have with those job seekers because those are your assets. So you have to really know them. But I think for me too, I've never actually been really far removed from the whole like idea that it is the relationship that is the most important, like relationships first always. So for me that still stays true in my own business now. Like we put relationships first over like the transaction. So we make sure that people really do feel comfortable that we're looking out for them. So that's probably what really helped me really take a step ahead was that those relationships were really important to me.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I like the philosophy for sure. It makes sense. So, well, let's talk about Monarch then, because you mentioned that it was during the pandemic that this came about. Tell me that story.
So my non-compete, I couldn't work in Houston when I left the big first company for a year. So I ended up working for another company, actually worked out of state in Tennessee. So in Memphis, Tennessee, I had to keep traveling back and forth there. So that way I could continue working in recruiting. And then the pandemic hit in April of 2020, right when my non-compete was over. So we all get sent home and now I'm like working from my home and I hadn't even really been to the Houston office. and the company started doing layoffs because there were no jobs to fill. Everybody was so confused, like, what is going on? Like, the world was upside down. So the company, I think, had gone through 1 or 2 rounds of layoffs. And then I was laid off in September of 2020. So that same day that I was laid off at 8 o'clock in the morning. I knew I was getting laid off. So got up early, had the call. But I think it was like within like 2 hours, I was already on like a Teams call with a recruiter because we're recruiters. Like, we tell our candidates to do what we do. We lean into our network. And so I went right into my network, went right into my DMs, already saw multiple people had reached out to me. And this was during the pandemic. So I'm like, okay, like something's still, brewing in recruiting. Within 2 hours, was on a Teams call, met someone from another big firm. And the interview was great. They set me up with an interview the very next day. Now I'm meeting with like the president over like the entire like North America region or whatever for this other, multi-billion-dollar firm. And that interview went really well. But I knew, like, as soon as we hung up, they wanted to schedule a third interview. And I was just like, I can do this on my own. Like, I don't know where the thought came from because there's no entrepreneurs in my family, like none. So I'm like, I don't know where the thought came from, but it landed. And I'm like, so honestly, Mark, I went to my husband and was like, do you believe in me? And he's like, are you trying to start your own company? I'm like, yeah. So he's like, I know you can do it. So I had his blessing, went to my parents, my grandmother, my in-laws, and pitched it because it was during the pandemic. It was a crazy time. Nobody really was hiring. And they were all like, we support it. So the next day I just went online like everybody else that's never started a business and Googled, how do you start a business? And the rest is honestly history. We launched officially in October of 2020 and decided I wanted to go direct hire only. So picked that, wanted to stay in accounting and finance, and I wanted to stay in HR as well. I really like the HR space. So I decided to stick with that. And that's what we've been ever since. So we're coming up to 4 years in business. But I always share this piece too, because I think a lot of people, especially now, like everyone's building a brand online, like they try to make owning any kind of business look really easy. And it wasn't easy for me. I didn't first know what I was doing. It was my first time owning a company. I started a recruiting company in a pandemic with no jobs. I was an inside sales recruiter, so I didn't have sales per se. I didn't have business development experience. I had no book of business starting my own company. So it was a lot of challenges that I had to overcome. And for the first 6 months, I made no money. So it was just that drive to not quit that honestly helped me get to 4 years.
I love this, Sarah. It's so fascinating. The pandemic was, I mean, it was a horrible experience for so many people and from a health point of view and everything else. But from a business point of view, honestly, Sarah, the pandemic was the making of me. And what I mean by that is like when your back's against the wall and you have to kind of like tear up what you're doing and try something completely different, then it almost forces you to get, well, first of all, you've got nothing to lose, right? If you've got no business coming in,
Yep.
then you're like, well, what I'm doing isn't working. So let me just go in a different direction here. And so I actually took the loans that were available from the government to kind of support small businesses. I used mine to hire Leanne. And because I figured, look, I don't know, we don't know what's going to happen with the economy or whatever, but if I'm going to go down, I'm going to absolutely go for it here and
Yep.
just like, you take this as an opportunity to really scale and grow my company. And it's all kind of snowballed from there and worked out really well. But like, I often wonder looking back, if that shock to the world didn't happen, I might have just kept coasting along in my comfort zone and like I would have done okay, but I would probably not be anywhere near as successful as I am right now. So I kind of am thankful for that's the silver lining anyway from that whole horrible
Same.
experience. So you got laid off and then immediately started interviewing. How long before this thought came to you, like this bolt of inspiration, I'm going to do this for myself?
Like 3 days.
Okay,
It was
wow.
It was super instant, honestly. I just started to think about all the money that I, as a top producer, was bringing into some of these, especially the first company that I worked at that I was producing. And I was thinking about all the money that I made them. And then I was like thinking about my best year financially from them. And I was like, God, there's so much that I'm leaving on the table. And I was a super value to them. So it's like, for me, I'm like, I know that I can do this on my own. So it was 3 days. Um, but I'm not going to, lie and say that I was super confident the whole time that I was going through it, because when you're not getting any business for 6 months and you're making the calls and you're doing the outreach. And at that time, I just started to work on building a personal brand. I never used LinkedIn before I started my company. Like I really didn't. I had LinkedIn and I maybe had like 1,000 or 1,500 connections on LinkedIn. But in the temp space that I lived in, a lot of my candidates weren't on LinkedIn. So, for me, I didn't really actually value from it. So immediately when I started my company, not only am I trying to find businesses and do the whole thing, but I'm trying to build this brand. I'm trying to find my voice. And I made a commitment to post and to create content and do video and do all the things. And I mean, it was extremely overwhelming and it was really difficult, especially when you weren't seeing any return out of it. So it took a long time for me to see that it was actually working. Because like anyone else, after you're working your tail off, trying to make connections, trying to make magic happen for 6 months and not seeing it happen, it's impossible for you not to start questioning yourself. So I definitely went through a period where that voice inside my head, I had to tune it all the way down. So that way I could keep focused on, this is the plan. I don't have a plan B because I'm not going back. This has to work.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Let's talk about that first 6 months. So, it's anyone who started a business knows it's exciting and terrifying in equal measure, right? But and most people kind of think, well, it might take me like 3 months to kind of get going. And then, if you get to 6 months and there's still really not much happening, then that must be super scary. Like you mentioned, tuning down the sort of critical voice in your head that was like questioning can you say more about the mindset that you had around that time and how you were able to kind of have the confidence to keep trying?
So I picked this up really early in business because at the time when I started my company, I didn't really have any mentors. So I really, and I tried reaching out to people, and I talk about this all the time. Here in Houston, I did go out of my way to reach out to certain people that had already started their companies years before and ask them to coffee or just to like jump on teams with me. And it was not well received. A lot of people did not want to help me. And I don't know if they viewed me as competition or not serious. It didn't matter. They weren't really willing to help. So what I ended up doing was really honestly taking on a lot of like reading and podcasts for mindset and getting very, very disciplined. So for me, every single day it was, I actually believe in metrics. I'm like that weird recruiter that actually believes in those things.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, like I do believe in them. So I stayed committed to it. I literally stayed committed to hitting my numbers. I posted them up on a board. Like I looked at them every single day. I read books that, would help to like keep me on track, keep that, voice tuned down. Cause my entire life, I've kind of suffered with that inferiority complex and, that voice in my head telling me I wasn't good enough. I think a lot of people do suffer with that. And I certainly did. And so, I really was like, I have to conquer that once and for all. So it was really about self-development. I got really into self-development for the first time in 2018 and then really just decided that I needed that. So I had to seek out my own mentors, and I seeked out mentors in business and also seeked out mentors in recruiting. And they weren't necessarily here in Houston. They were, in other parts of the United States, and, kind of leaned on them for support. And I think that it was a combination of just really believing in myself and knowing that like I didn't have a plan B and I didn't want a plan B. I didn't want to go back. Like I still don't. I think about that all the time. Like I don't want to go back to corporate or to agency. Like this is my life now. I'm obsessed with it. So I think when you become that obsessed with wanting to be the best and wanting it to work, compounding your activity, your metrics, hitting numbers, and like that actually builds confidence too. So I think just staying consistent in that has really been probably a big factor in me succeeding to 4 years, where I know a lot of people that started companies at the same time I did, they're not in business anymore.
Hey, resilient recruiters. I hope you can tell by now, I love the recruitment industry, and I'm working really hard to produce excellent content and give you value. Having been a recruiter myself, I know how rewarding it can be I also know how tough it can be. I'm on a mission to reach as many recruiters as possible and have a positive impact on their careers and their businesses. If I can help you make more placements, that means you're improving more lives, and together we can have a real positive impact on the world. The biggest thing you can do to support me on this mission is please take a couple of minutes and leave me a review. Then send an email or LinkedIn message to let me know so I can thank you personally. I love this, Sarah. I think this is going to be so helpful to so many people listening. I love the idea of like, there is no plan B. I have to make this work. There's no going back. And the discipline around metrics that even though there's no jobs or you're not getting the business, you're still committed to doing the right activities every day and every week. It's funny that you mentioned that you're obsessed. My wife tells me all the time that I'm obsessed with my business, and it's hard to kind of switch off sometimes, I think is what she means. Like, when you work for yourself, then, you don't at 5 o'clock just switch off and, go to normal life and family and everything, which, yeah. So I can relate to that. You mentioned personal development and leaning on books. Are there specific titles that you had a big impact on you or that you can recommend?
Yeah, so I think the book that made the biggest impact on me that I share a lot is The Compound Effect by
Mm,
Darren Hardy. That
yep.
book, I think I read it originally in 2018. I've read it probably like 5 or 6 times now. I've recommended it to a lot of people too. But that book really helped me to hone in on like being that 1%, like the 1% rule and improving every single day and, staying on, track. And if you go off track, it has a lot of analogies in there that clicked for me. That book was a game changer for me. But some books that have helped me even in like the sales piece would be like, I don't know if you've heard of fanatical prospecting.
Yeah.
I think it's like a James Jeb Blunt. I think
Yep.
he wrote this book. So I needed help with BD. So I mean, a lot of that book has like tactical things and helping with business development, but it also helps with your mental, like what you think about it and having to show up and what does it actually mean to make these relationships. So and then there's another book too that I read somewhat recently called Relationships First by Emily Frisella. And that book was really, really great too. And I recommended that book to quite a few people too, because it's about business, but it's just about life too. Like the importance of relationships, it can't always be like, what about me? Like, how does this work out for me? Like, you really have to keep giving and giving and giving, and you can't really expect anything in return.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing those titles. I'm going to add, I have The Compound Effect, but I've not read it yet. So I need to.
It's good.
All right. Now that you've told me that, I'm going to check it out immediately. So thank you. Let's talk about building a personal brand, because I didn't realize you hadn't really been a heavy user of LinkedIn before you started your business,
Yeah.
because you have just exploded on LinkedIn. You're doing so well with that.
Thank you.
Talk to me about that journey and what was your strategy, and then what are some of the tactics and what's your mindset around it?
It was scary in the beginning because I'd never used LinkedIn, and not a lot of people do post on LinkedIn because they're scared of judgment. And, there's still trolls and they exist on LinkedIn. They're not just on all these other social media platforms. Like they're also there. So it was scary, but I committed because I knew I'm like, okay, I'm one person and I only specialize in Houston, Texas. I was breaking into a different sort of skill set and margin. So I really needed people to know who I was. And so I knew I needed to start posting and creating it. So in the very beginning, I wore that hat mainly. So I didn't outsource any help for it. I just said, okay, you're going to post every single day. So the content that I started with and the content that I still have is pretty much the same, because a lot of the content that I create is based off conversations that I'm having with my candidates and with my clients. And so I'm hoping that it's helping people. And so everything I post is about an experience. It's about how to help people. It's about a tip, a trick. It's supposed to be there for value. So I started with just story. I've always been told since I was a kid, I'm a really good storyteller. So I finally was like, okay, maybe I am. So I started posting stories and they started taking off. So I went from having like 1 like, 2 likes, 5 likes to, lots of impressions and having millions of views a week. But it took time, and none of this happens overnight. I, committed to posting on LinkedIn. I created an Instagram, which you're wearing every single hat as a new business owner, I was having a hard time. Like they didn't even look related. Like it was the same brand, but didn't look like each other. It was really bizarre. It was hard for me. I'm not a branding expert. So you start learning as you go. You make mistakes. You might have a post that you think is going to take off and it doesn't. But I was a firm believer in not deleting anything. So everything I've ever put out there stays out there over time. I decided I wanted to kind of level up on the content. So I started adding video. So I've been doing video content for a year and a half, which honestly has really blown the brand up. So I commit to having my videographer. We video, I think every quarter. We do it 4 times a year. We put about 80 to 100 videos out a year. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it feels like a lot for me when I'm when I'm taping them. And
I know exactly what you
it
mean.
feels like that. Yeah. And all my content, I tell this to everybody. Like I use my phone and I put notes in like between sessions, but like I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning the day we tape and I actually write my content that day. So I'll go in my phone, I'll see what's more relevant, and then it will come to mind. And then he shows up, we tape, and a few weeks later we start putting them out. So every year I've tried to level up. We started doing blogs this year. So I started writing articles this year, started taking on more speaking engagements to help with building the brand. I had a conversation recently with someone that just started a recruiting firm and actually wasn't even in recruiting, like left an industry and started a recruiting firm. And she was asking me some tips and she's like, I love your brand, but I don't think I'm ready to actually build my own brand. And I tell this to everybody, you can't table this. Like you can't table building your brand, not in 2024, not moving forward. Like if you don't have a personal brand, you are going to really fall behind and be lost amongst a lot of people that are really willing to put themselves out there. So it hasn't always been easy. I've absolutely been trolled. It used to really bother me, to be honest with you, Mark, like reading some of the comments. They were pretty critical of either my voice or how I look or the stuff coming out of my mouth that they didn't personally agree with. And it comes with the territory now. Like the platforms have blown up. We get a lot of people. I'm not going to always be everyone's cup of tea, but my premise has never changed. I'm trying to help people. So everything that I put out there, I'm really trying my very best to bring value and help as many job seekers and companies as I possibly can.
Wow, there's so much here to unpack. I love this. I don't get enough trolls. I think I'm
You
not
don't
getting
want them.
enough, I'm not getting enough exposure. That means, right? If you're not getting trolled, that means you're not putting yourself out there enough. So maybe just because you get so many impressions, then there's going to be some weirdos who see your
Yeah.
stuff.
They're not nice. Yeah, you don't want them because you learn you don't even comment back. You don't engage with them. But yeah, you don't want them.
No, I'm teasing. I'm trying to see the good side. It means like, you can't also have raving fans without having haters, right?
Yep,
Is
they come with the territory.
exactly. If you're going to put your message out there and try and reach, a large number of people. So you post, when you say committed to post every day, is that every day of the week or Monday to Friday or
So it
what's
used to be 7 days a week. So when I first started the company, for probably the first year and a half, I did 7 days a week of content. So I actually would post every single day, like create it and post. Create was always like top of mind, like what was on my brain that day. And now it's a little bit different because I don't have the time to do that now. So I actually create most of my content on Sunday evening. So I'm obsessed too. My husband says the same thing to me. He's like, it's Sunday. Why are you working? But I work for myself. So I am obsessed with it. So I will carve out like 2 hours usually on a Sunday to just, schedule out my content for LinkedIn. I now do have a social media manager. So she manages getting the Instagram, like all my content uploaded to Instagram, to YouTube, the company LinkedIn page. So she does manage that. But I do actually still now post, but now I'm posting personally 5 days a week. So I've really posted 5 days a week for years now. I really don't miss a week.
I love this and I agree 100%. Like if you have a marketing assistant or social media manager or somebody who's helping you with social media, it can be really helpful to help you stay organized and accountable and also to manage multiple different platforms. But for LinkedIn, which for recruiters is, I think for most recruiters, that's your most important platform,
Mhm.
right?
It is.
You still want to hold on to and be very close to what's getting posted on there and still be the author of. Doesn't mean you have to write every word, but you're the originator of that content. So like at this stage, Rachel actually does most of the posting, but is my content. She's just going in and posting it. Another thing that she does really, really well is, for example, the videos that you're mentioning. So we've started doing more video content as well, but you need to write something, right, to go with the video. So she'll use like Claude or something like that, use the transcript from the video, and then get Claude to write a LinkedIn post that is relevant based on what I say in the video. So, and then she also knows my voice and my personality and she tweaks it. But then that's completely different to getting ChatGPT to write your content for you when it, you know, which isn't going to sound like you and it's going to sound like AI. And there's some phrases and words that kind of give away that it's ChatGPT that wrote it, right? But if you're uploading a transcript or something, or even if it's like a blog article and you say, hey, turn this into a LinkedIn post, then you're still kind of the author or originator of that content. So it's got a better chance of actually turning out good. Your commitment to video you're doing a brilliant job with video, by the way.
Thank you.
And I like how you spend a day recording and then you've got content for the next quarter, right? 80 to 100. So like we're talking about 20 videos, basically a video a day.
So we're doing it in a quarter. So we release 80 to 100 videos in a year's time. And to make them kind of spread out a little bit more, because we're all on a budget this year. Last year I had a bigger budget. This year, we're not doing as good, but I still have a big budget for marketing because marketing is a huge part of my brand. So to not put that on pause, we're just doing now, like we've released 80 videos this year. So we'll release 80 because I still have one more taping. So we'll do one more taping and we'll do that, but we'll use other videos. So we'll recycle older videos because I started doing video, I think in March of 2023 was my first time sitting down and doing this. And so now we'll take some old videos and recycle the ones that, really hit and a lot of people liked, and we'll kind of make that part of like our sequence for posting in a single week to make them out. But the videos, honestly, I get so much good feedback about the videos, and hopefully they're inspiring other people, other recruiters to actually take it on, because I know, and I've had a lot of people say like, you look so natural when you do it, but like, Mark, I'm dying inside. Like, I don't love it. It's not my favorite thing to do. I don't love being on camera. And so especially when you get trolled too, and you have people kind of picking at you, it does kind of like make you a little insecure doing it, but it's a part of my brand. And so I'm never not going to do it, especially if I have content that I think is worthy of sharing with my network, which has grown so large. So, and it's funny because the videos too now, I don't have TikTok, and the videos get shared on TikTok. And so other people are monetizing my content. So that's actually led into conversations with my social media manager to start a TikTok. But I'm on the fence with it still. I'm still on the fence with the whole thing, but I'll get it sent to me by lots of people being like, oh my gosh, you're trending on TikTok. And it will come up with like 100,000 views or 200,000 views. And I'm like, man. So there's that. So
that's interesting. So your videos, talk me through your process, because a lot of people are intimidated to do video. And I think because most of us, myself included, don't like the way we look on camera or the way I'm used to my voice now because I've done podcasting for so long. But most people, when they first hear a recording of their voice, they're like, do I really sound like that? Because our voice sounds different in our own head, right?
Yep.
So how did you get past that, number one? And number two, coming up with the content. And you gave a clue earlier, which is that it's based on real conversations with clients and candidates that are then going to add value to others who are in your market. But, and then you mentioned you get ideas, you capture them on your phone. But how many videos are you shooting in that one day? And what's the process there?
So it's just 20 videos every time we shoot. So the videographer that I use, I've had him since the very beginning. He's amazing. He has different packages. So you can do 20, 30, or 40 videos. And I'm burnt out by 20. I'm done.
Right.
I'm like, between changing your clothes and then sitting down, I'm like, so I'm done. So I do 20 videos. We do them quarterly. That's it. And yeah, so my content really does come from the conversation of, my network. So people will slide into my DMs and literally say like, if you're going to create content, this is a topic I want you to talk about. And so sometimes it's worthy of sharing. Other times it's not, because a lot of people, misery likes company. So I'll get a lot of people that are just miserable and they want to complain and they want me to talk on it. But that's not my platform. My platform is supposed to be positive and help to be like helpful. And, also talk on the things that aren't so pleasant in job seeking and, the job market. I'm a very realistic content creator. But I don't want to ever be known as like that negative that feeds into that. So sometimes it comes from suggestions, but a lot of the times it comes from the fact that like we're recruiters, I'm on the phone all the time. So I'm on the phone, I'm in person, I'm on video. So I have these conversations. And so when it comes to the day of recording, like I said, I wake up really early and I go into my phone and I have the same notebook. Like you guys can go and see my videos. It's the same notebook. And I just flip it and then I start adding my content. So I'll go to see what I didn't use from the session before. Then I go into my phone to see if I wrote down anything in my notes that I wanted to talk about. And then I just start letting the wheels go. So as the wheels are going, I start writing it down. I start writing topics down. And then my videographer is phenomenal. So he actually came from real estate, but had a short lifespan in staffing. So what's nice is that he kind of does speak the language. So as I got really lucky with him because he helps to kind of, if I have to correct a way I'm saying something, or, he brings up really good points that maybe I didn't think about. So he actually also helps to coach me through certain videos that I might need coaching on. Now, I can say I don't really need coaching much anymore because I've done it so much. And so I don't really have to do lots of takes. I'm usually a one take kind of girl. So I can get them done now really quickly, which is another piece of, practice, which I feel like a lot of people, if you just put yourself out there, the first time it is exciting and it's nerve-wracking to go in a video. I was super nervous. I was really excited about adding video, but I was really, really nervous going into my first shoot. And once I saw the product and got over my voice too, and actually that's one of the things that people troll me on. They're like, God, her voice is so annoying. I'm like, is it that annoying?
You have a great voice. Do not listen to that.
That's a big one that I get, honestly. But once you get over what you look like and how you sound, and you start seeing the people comment saying, thank you for posting this, this was very helpful. It honestly, that's all that matters, is that you've impacted, you've made a difference, and that actually gives you the confidence to go again. And each time you tape, you really do just get better and better and better. And I think for me, when I watch back on my videos from a year and a half ago to the ones I just put out, I can see how much I've grown confidence-wise in those videos.
Amazing. That's so many good tips there, Sarah. Let's give a shout out to your video guy.
Rusty Gates with Rusty Gates Media here in Houston. He is phenomenal. He will travel. He will travel too, but he is phenomenal. Look him up. He's great.
All right. So shout out to Rusty. Sanjay and I are actually launching this service as well for our clients because so many people ask us, like, because we encourage people to do what you're doing and do these videos and like, but could you just do it for me? Right. And so we're like, okay. So that's like, watch this space. That's coming soon. Some media services. But one more thing I want to, oh yeah, ROI. This is what the question we always get asked. Like, okay, but that sounds like a lot of work. What's the ROI? Is it going to be worth it? So what's your answer to that?
I think it varies on what you look at as the return on that investment. So for me, I'm a new business owner. I'm just coming up to 4 years. A lot of people think there's overnight success when you start any kind of company, especially in staffing and especially if you have experience. And I'm telling the truth about, branding. You have to have the brand now because the first thing we all do is when we're looking up anything, whether it's a doctor, a restaurant, whatever it is, we Google things, right? So we Google to see credibility, and that builds trust when we start seeing the reviews and people and all that good stuff. So in the very beginning, it is going to seem exhausting. You're going to be like, what is this even bringing to me? Over time, it's going to help people find you. So that's the return. So it's not overnight. There is literally no elevator here to success. You have to take the stairs, and this is part of that now. So I can honestly say that in the very beginning, I saw the return almost immediately. And then it started to go like this a little. And then it started to blow up again. And that's recruiting. It's like this. So the biggest thing for me is the reason why I continue and commit to creating this content is because we're in a down market. we're not staying here. So when the market goes like this, I want them to remember my face, my name, my brand, my company. And hopefully with putting out as much content as I'm putting out, they do. So that's the whole return on it, is making sure that you're staying front and center no matter what kind of market we're actually in.
That's a great answer. Well done. I like it. Yes, it is so true. Like this not only helps you get found because people are gonna like you if they come across your name, they're gonna search for you before they talk to you and see who is this person. And if they see the content and the quality of things that you're putting out, and that builds huge credibility and trust, and that gives you a major advantage versus the competition, because even though this is a popular idea, it's a minority of people who are doing it, right?
There's not a lot of us. And I hear it too from a lot of people that will say things like, I can't afford it, like, and I understand that too. As a new business owner, you have to really be very smart with your money. But I always say this to people, like, scared money don't make money. Like, you have to spend money to make it. Like, in part of my budget and part of what's worked for me and my business model over the years has 100% been investing in marketing. So the marketing budget will always have video. I will never, ever not have video in the marketing budget because it's that important. So part of your budget has to be marketing. You have to have a marketing budget no matter what. And it doesn't have to be a very big budget. And maybe you don't have to do as many videos as I'm doing, or maybe you can afford to do more. But it's about making the content and making the videos, because again, like, if you're not willing to invest in yourself and in your brand, then you're going to be, again, like, you will be lost amongst a bunch of people that are actually really taking this on. So, and it is not a lot of us, right, that are doing it. But I think the more that they see the content, you're going to see a lot more people, especially going off on their own, doing this. And so, do you want to stand out or do you want to be lost? So,
Beautiful. Well said. Yeah, I think about it a lot in that when you see these numbers of impressions, you kind of don't really associate to what that really means. So if like on my videos, I'm getting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 impressions, you're probably getting a lot more than that. But those are real people. Like imagine if they were all in a room, 5,000 people, and you're standing up on the stage in front of them. That's a huge number of people, right? And so what other platform allows you to speak to and address and have the attention of thousands of people where you're sharing your knowledge and trying to add value and benefit other people? Not only is that having a positive impact on the world, but also they will remember that. You mentioned staying like top of mind. I think that's critical, because who are you going to give your business to? Like some recruiter who you know nothing about, or a recruiter who has actually given you ideas and advice and insights that made you really stop and think, or that helped you in some small way. Obviously it's going to be the person who you've already had some value from. You want to reciprocate that. That's the person who you're going to trust. So
that's right. And also, to just staying on impressions real quick, that also I think is a reason why people don't post on LinkedIn, because they don't understand what that is. So when you start posting, you might only get like 10 likes, but your impressions might be 100 or 200. And that means people saw the post, they stopped, they read it. So that's what you want. You don't have to do things for likes. You don't. And that's what I always tell people that are so like scared to post. They're so scared to make content, and they don't do it, and they let fear stop them. Stop caring about likes. Like it doesn't matter. Look at the impressions. If you had high impressions, then lots of people saw the content. That's all that matters. And eventually the likes will come, and it will start taking off. But not every piece of content you put out is a winner. It's just not. Some of the ones that I think are like going to be like slam dunks, they just fall flat. So you just really never know with the algorithm.
it's funny because my colleague Julie, so shout out to Julie. She is our client services director, and our clients love their one-on-one coaching sessions with her. So she had a viral post a few weeks ago that got millions of impressions, and I tried to copy. I was like, okay, I'm gonna copy this idea. So I made my own version. Like in the same style. It was on a different topic, but basically tried to mirror exactly what she did. No, didn't. I mean, I got 5 or 6,000, but it didn't get millions. So,
Yep.
you can't really
You never
engineer
know.
it. That's the thing. You can't really engineer it. But if you're consistent and you're producing high quality things, then it's gonna have an impact. Sarah, obviously, you're building your brand is one aspect of your success, but like, tell me about. So you had the first 6 months when you launched Monarch, where like you were working super hard, nothing was happening, but then things started really taking off for you, and I think you built like $1.5 million within an 18-month time frame, which is insane. In addition to the personal branding, what were the other elements, tactics that contributed to you being able to achieve that?
Speed. So I think that was the biggest thing that I learned when I worked at the first company. It was like time kills all deals. So I think about that all
Mhm.
the time. So, and money, like speed, honestly. And so for me, I really did. And because we're obsessed with this and because I was a new business owner, like I was not losing any deals. So I was really fast. I had a full pipeline because my strength is recruiting. So I always recruit no matter if I have a job or not. So every week when I come in, even as a solopreneur, like if I have nothing to work on, well, I still have plenty of recruits that I can get on the matrix. So I have a full stacked pipeline. I still meet every single week. Now I'm meeting a lot more because the market is, not so great. So I was normally meeting probably at that time, maybe like, I don't know, putting 10 on the board and being able to maybe like um, put on my matrix like 4 or 5 of them that checked out. But now I'm probably meeting like, I don't know, 15 to 20 candidates a week. I'm not even going to lie about it. It's exhausting, honestly, but these folks really need help. And so they're that's a huge piece of being able to be successful in staffing is having the candidates. And
Mhm.
so a lot of people make the mistake of when they start their first company. This is a mistake that I think they make. They start a company, they start a staffing firm, and they go right into business development. Well, if you don't have the candidates, then how are you going to fill the role? You can get the job in all you want, but if you don't actually have a stacked matrix of candidates in a pipeline that you can go to, then you will lose the job order to the competition. So that's probably been the biggest factor is that I am so strong in recruiting is that my pipeline's always stacked.
So speed, you're talking to candidates every week, whether you've got jobs for them or not. I agree 100% with that. So at the moment, you're saying what 15 candidate conversations per week. When you recruit mid to senior, you're recruiting senior level people. Your candidates are also potential clients, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
these are not wasted conversations. They are not only building your candidate pipeline, like you said, so that you can fill jobs quickly when you get them, but also you're building relationships with hiring managers who, whether now or at some time in the future, can give you business. So those, to me, those recruiting calls are also doubling up as business development calls, right?
Yep, 100%. And I think a lot of people too, like right now, I'm actually taking a lot of calls from like talent acquisition folks, like TA managers that are out of work. And, we have to look out for each other. I think that there's like this thing that we're not supposed to like each other, like agency recruiters and TA, we're not supposed to get along. But a lot of like my best relationships and doors that have opened for me have been because I've made really good relationships with TA managers that understand that we're kind of the same and, we have to look out for each other. So I think it's like not turning your nose to anyone in, particular and just trying to, like I said, help as many people as you can. But to your point, yes, a lot of the people that I was helping specifically in that 6 months during the pandemic, they were controllers, they were CFOs, they were CAOs. So when they found a job, which I didn't find for them because I didn't have any business, but when they actually landed, who did they call when they needed to build out their teams? They remembered me.
Absolutely. So you've got your strong personal brand. You've got you're always recruiting, and speaking to candidates so that you've got speed. You can fill jobs quickly. What else? Because I feel like the what you achieve, Sarah, is extraordinary, and I'm looking to try and understand the other building blocks that went into that.
You always have to be a student of learning. So for me, I think I've made myself really uncomfortable almost every single day, which is a good thing by walking into rooms that I wouldn't necessarily want to walk into alone and walking in alone and surrounding myself with people that are smarter, that been in business longer. Um, I've been able to take criticism, and that wasn't something that wasn't a strength of mine up until I started my own company. It really wasn't. I didn't like to be criticized. I thought I was great at everything. And then you start a business and you realize quickly that you're not that great at everything. You can't be. So you really need, you need the help. So I think I've really honestly spent a lot of time finding the right mentor, surrounding myself with the right people that are giving me sound advice. You don't need to take every bit of advice that people give you either. I think a lot of people take, the word of like their mentor as like the word of God. And it's not. Like, you are your own business owner. You have to be open-minded to sometimes unsolicited advice. But the truth is that you're going to know kind of like where you need to go, like what lane you need to stay in. You're going to know because you're going to know in your gut what it feels like. So for me, I've surrounded myself with really strong mentors. I am into personal development. I have coaches. I really believe in kind of leveling up. And I think it's also too because it has been so important for me to stay disciplined that I literally do stay disciplined. I think it's been one of those things that unless I'm really honestly for business, hitting metrics, hitting numbers, scheduling events, or personally like hitting the gym, making sure I'm eating. And I'm that person that like logs my food. Like if I don't track everything in life, then I feel out of control. So I like to be in control. So I think just being disciplined in all areas is really important.
Love that. So, some quick fire questions, Sarah. Let's start with metrics. What are the most important metrics that you pay attention to?
So part of my metrics is MPC. So I'm still an MPC gal. So ad calls are huge. Ad calls really help build my business in the beginning. So I don't go a week without doing ad calls. I do follow-up ad calls. I have actually um, a system where, I reach out for ad calls. I think like, well, I know for a fact it's 7 times, which is crazy. That 7's like my number. So ad calls are huge for me. I don't miss an opportunity for that. MPCs, new connections, and making sure that I'm responding to them on LinkedIn. So those are big. So my number when I first got into recruiting, my metrics numbers were really high. They were 120. I'm probably now hitting maybe like on a good week, like 50, but still I'm hitting them. And recruiting numbers, 50 connects. I call them connects. So whether that's my MPCs, my ad calls, new connects on LinkedIn, my posts are also part of my metric. So how many posts I'm making is part of it. But recruiting is a big one. So recruiting is still a big one because in recruiting, I think a lot of people forget this. They don't think recruiting is as important, but you get a lot of leads from people that you recruit, where they've interviewed, what other recruiters have called them for other opportunities recently that are hiring that are using the competition. Those are leads. Those you want to actually follow up on because those companies see the value in staffing firms. So they're already paying another staffing firm. They might as well pay you down the road. So all of that's really important too. So those are big for me, for my metrics.
So 50 a week, what qualifies as a connect?
A response. So like for me, I was also taught that early in my career that you could have logged a bunch of connects in the system, but you couldn't complete any unless there was an actual response. Like someone replied to your email, had you on the phone, like they answered the call. So it has to be like an actual connect where someone is giving you the time of day, not you just like, sending over some random MPC and then they don't respond. That's like you can't really complete that. It's uncompleted.
Got it. Contingent or retained?
So I'm contingent, but honestly, recently with a couple of things that have happened this year, I am not turning down the idea of maybe adding retained, especially with a couple of searches and how they kind of wrapped up recently for me. So, but I am 100% currently contingent.
Okay. We can help you with that. Let's
I know.
definitely work on that. Tech stack. What are the tools that you can't live without?
Oh, I'm super basic. Like everyone asks me about my tech stack, but I'm basic. I log everything in my CRM still. Like if it's not logged, it didn't happen. So I keep my CRM clean and up to date all the time. So I use Bullhorn. I'm big on Canva. God, some of my other tech. Somebody asked me this the other day. They're like, "What do you have?" And I'm like, I actually have a tech stack, but I forget it all the time because I don't really honestly use it all that often. So LinkedIn Recruiter Pro, I actually have the pro version. I really like it a lot. So I still use that. Automation tools, I haven't really actually dove into those too much yet. I'm going to. I will do that because it's something that's actually really important to me. I know Dripify is something that you have actually pitched and several other people I've actually talked to have also pitched it. I've tried some other CRM, or not CRM, some AI sourcing tools, honestly, Mark, recently. And with all of them coming out, you can't help but want to try them. And I have actually tried like Better Leap, a couple of different ones. But so far, I haven't actually found anything better than Recruiter Pro version for LinkedIn. So, but yeah, I just have a basic CRM. I have my LinkedIn Pro. I'm heavy on Canva. That's kind of it.
Great. Okay, awesome. Sarah, one final thing, which is during the most adverse times, like whether it's starting your own business, during the pandemic and taking a while to really get going, what are the keys to being resilient?
Literally not having the word quit in your vocabulary. Like when you decide to do something, it doesn't matter what it is. What's going to build your confidence is by actually accomplishing it. So if you have a goal and your goal is to be a business owner or your goal is to lose 25 pounds, like you can't keep, I guess, like cutting yourself short and not completing the goal. Like we have goals, you write them down. They're supposed to be there for you to achieve. And I think a lot of people, they just don't have that juice inside, that heat that actually gets them to that point. I don't have a backup plan. This is the plan. Like this is my life. It's my life. This is my job, my company, the way that I want to, run things. And I have goals for myself that no one else can make for me. I have to make my own. So for me, I think that, I don't quit anything. Some people might say that's stubbornness, but it has worked out for me. Whenever I've had to pivot, it's always a pivot to get me to the goal. It's not to change the goal or to deviate from it to create a different goal. It's to help me get to it, but maybe I have to go this road instead. So I think it's just being open to being able to be flexible, to being able to pivot, to wanting to learn, but never quitting. Because it's always the people that quit like 3 feet from goal that are like, they regret it. They're like, oh, I wish I would have done it. But like for me, I just don't quit. I just get to the goals. And every time you get your goal and you accomplish that goal, the next time you set your goals, they become bigger and bigger and bigger. And the reason they become bigger is because you've proven to yourself that you can actually achieve your goals. So your goals they're going to continue to grow because you continue growing. So I think that it's just having that mindset that you can really honestly do whatever it is you want to do.
Sarah, thank you so much. You've added tremendous value and shared so many great tips and insights with our listeners. So it was a lot of fun. So thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out some of my other episodes. You'll see 1 or 2 suggested episodes on the screen now.